Okay. So I think we'll get started with the title of my presentation, which is You Can Craft Your Life and Thrive. And the main reason that I want to say that is because of my story and the things that have happened to me, the things I've learned from that, and the things I've done with it since that. Just to give you kind of a quick background, and I'm going to apologize in advance if I happen to throw a cuss word, because I'm trying really hard today to behave myself, because I know we're in a place of worship, and I will do my best, and my heart is in the right place, even if my mouth happens to get a little crazy. So I'm sorry in advance. But that being said, I come from an Irish Catholic family up near Detroit, and I'm the 8th of 8, and that will all make sense as we go along through this. My parents were Depression-era babies. My father was a World War II vet. My mom was born in 1931. She was a take-no-crap, cleaning myself up here, take-no-crap kind of woman. And so I learned a lot of things from my family, one being an Irish iron will of strength, but one being patience, one being understanding, one being sticking with the plan. Whether the plan is working or not, I watched my parents stick with things. So that helps and it hurts, because it led to a lot of things in my life that were not necessarily the right move for me as a long-term goal. So basically, when you get into this, we're going to start talking about a very fun word today called narcissism. So with that, you get into, I went from Detroit down to Charlotte, North Carolina, and originally that was to get into racing. So I was a mechanical engineer and thought I was going to be in racing, and I fell in love during college with a guy that basically ended up being everything and nothing all at once. And we'll get into more of those details in a minute. But in the long end of the spectrum, I was married to him for 19 years. We had 2 children. I have a 20-year-old that's in college at Alabama, Roll Tide. I will say that only because they're paying 4 years of his tuition, because I'm a Notre Dame fan. But that being said, I will go with that for the time that he's in college. I can be bought for 4 years. And my daughter is now a 17-year-old and about to be in college, so I'm going to have to switch my allegiance depending on where she goes to school. So with that, we can start moving into this narcissism, what it is, what it means, how many people there are that are in this condition, we'll say. It's not necessarily a disease, but it is a disorder, as far as the psychiatric industry thinks it is. So if you go to the next slide. The description of narcissism is a person who lacks empathy. And when I say lacks empathy, I don't mean they have a little bit of empathy. I mean they have 0 empathy for anyone at all. And that their whole focus is only solely on themselves every second of every minute of every hour of every day. And they have no capability to focus on another individual. They are externally driven, meaning if you're happy, they're happy. If you're sad, they're sad. And it's your fault that they're sad. And if you're mad, they're angry, and it's your fault that they're angry. So their entire spectrum focuses on the second they're in, however they feel is the reality, not their reality, not it's the reality, meaning everyone around them is going to feel the way they feel, and it's going to be your fault. That's a narcissist. So just having that in mind, we'll move kind of forward into exactly what we're talking about in terms of narcissism and what it means to our country, to the world, and then we'll get into a little more. So if we could go to the next slide. We have, in the USA and the UK are where I'm really focusing right now, because the reality is these are the two areas of the globe where it's growing. Narcissism is an extreme problem in both of these areas of the world, but you're talking about 6% of the population that they say has narcissistic personality disorder. That's, you think not a lot of people, but the problem is those 6%, that's roughly 20 million people, and that's just in the US alone. Each one of those people will affect, before they die, at least 5 people negatively. And when I say affect, I mean they will tear the person down. They strip them of their worth, their self-esteem, their finances, their health, their careers, their livelihood, and in some cases, their lives because they commit suicide. So it's a very awful, extreme, and very numerous problem in our country when you really look at the effect of a narcissist on the greater world. So that being said, with that in your head, we'll move into the next slide to just let you know a little bit of what the phases are, because I really want everybody to know these phases. Every narcissists are in the same cluster B family as psychopaths and sociopaths. Narcissists are at the low end of the spectrum. So, like Ted Bundy, he's like the cousin of my ex-husband, if you think of it that way, okay? So, when you get into this, the first phase, and it's the same across the board, they all follow this same cycle. The first phase is idealization. That's when someone meets you and you think, oh, they really love me. They really like me. They're paying attention to everything I do. They want to talk on the phone with me all the time. They're sending you emails. They're sending you texts. They're sending you flowers. They're sending you candy. They're listening to every word that comes out of your mouth, and you're thinking, they're so attentive. No, they're listening to everything you say, and they're filing it so that it can be used against you later. And you think that, oh, this is great. This is wonderful. But it's not. So, that was the first phase. It's called love bombing. And the psychiatrists will call it love bombing. And it really starts to play out. It's just exorbitant. It's just over the top. And if you find yourself in a situation like that, pay attention. Don't just take it for the status quo, because it's not necessarily what you think it is. That being said, we can go to the next slide. Phase 2 is devaluation. This is the phase where everything they listened to and learned about you, from your likes, your dislikes, your weaknesses, everything that scares you, everything that bothers you, becomes something that they use against you. So, in my particular story, I had a lot of things that were going on in my life. We'll start with something simple. I had severe cystic acne growing up. It was so severe that it was disfiguring. It was horrible. And it was a situation where every day growing up, I'd go out and about, and I just had to learn to strengthen myself up because I knew that when I left the house, somebody was going to say something. And that's just the way it was. So I learned very hard, very quickly, very young to be very tough. And that, in the end, helped me later on. I had a 25-year banking career. I was in investment banking with the ilk that were responsible for our recent horrible crash as big as the Great Depression. I'm not proud of it, but I helped automate and, I was in technology. I helped automate and make everything faster. So I helped speed up the crash, if you will. Doesn't make me feel good as a person. But when you look at that, it's all tough-minded. And it becomes something that the narcissist uses against you. So in that phase, that person you love, that person I took vows with under a cross with a priest and very much meant my vows, this is a person that over the 19-year stretch, back to wearing the mask, I learned he cheated several times. The first time around, the Irish Catholic says, we're going to counseling. We're going to work through this. We're going to work out all the details, and we're going to really focus on what we've got going on here. And the reality is, he love-bombed me. Back to phase one. He love-bombed me, and he love-bombed the counselor. He manipulated our counselor to the point where the counselor said I was the one with the problem, even though I was the one working, even though I was the one providing. He was not working. He was off gallivanting around with who knows what, and I was working, taking care of our children. He was the stay-at-home dad, supposedly, which I found out was really not happening. So the reality is that idealization phase and then this devaluation cycle can repeat itself. And we'll get into more on that in a second, but it will go back and forth, back and forth. So you will have those moments where they throw you under the bus and you're thinking, which end is up? They have behaviors that are very distinct. These are behaviors that are known to be used in prisoner of war situations for interrogations. Things like gaslighting, things like triangulation, things like, these are techniques that get used in horrible situations deliberately to pull a person down and drive them insane. This is something the narcissist does naturally. They just know how. I don't know how, but they know how. So gaslighting, you come in, Julie, you come in and you tell me some horrible thing. And I say to you, why did you just say that? That's horrible. You said that. What are you thinking? And you look me straight in the eye and you say, I didn't say that. I don't know what you're talking about. You're crazy. You're crazy. And you just walk away. If a person does that to you enough, you start to lose your mind. And you start to write things down. You start taking notes, which is what I did, so I wouldn't go crazy. I would write down, you weren't here until 5:30 this morning. Where were you? He'd look me in the eye. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do that. You don't know what you're talking about. I was here. I was here the whole time. Okay, no, you weren't here. Where were you? It's 5:30 a.m. I've been here the whole time. I just got up to go to the bathroom. I don't know what you're talking about. You're crazy. You start to lose your mind. And so in the end, it ends up deflection. You're the one with the problem. You keep telling me what I did wrong. You're the one with the problem. Yet again, you feel like you're crazy. And yet again, they're off scot-free. This goes on and on and on. And you slowly start to lose yourself in the cycle. You start to think you're going crazy. Your health starts to suffer. I'm a 20-year MS patient. I was diagnosed 2 weeks before my wedding. I don't find that a mystery. And I can't prove it. It's one of those things, I can't prove it. But at the same time, since he's been out of my house, I've not had any MS issues. So I'm not going to say that they're related, because legally that would get me in a crunch. But I will say the facts are he's not in the house anymore, and I've not had an MS issue since then. So the health goes downhill. Once you get out of that devaluation phase, eventually they get tired of toying with you. You go through enough idealization, devalue, idealization, devalue. And by this point, you feel like you're down in the gutter. You have nothing left. You have nothing left to give. And so you end up in a situation where they get bored with you. And they've found someone else. Usually they've found someone else, and they feel like they can transfer the focus to that person. And then they can turn around and leave you. So 19 years into this marriage, he decided he was bored. He didn't say that, but I knew something was up. I had my suspicions, but again, I'm the crazy one. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm completely delusional. That's what gets fed to you on the daily. So you end up in a situation where, for my story, we went to marital counseling that day. And we go in the door. He's late. Where was he? We'll get there in a minute. He comes in, he sits down, and he says, I don't know why we're doing this. And the counselor says, I kind of don't know why either, because the counselor had started picking up on, there's something different here. There's something off. And so basically, he says, well, I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave. And at this point, I have a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old in this story. And I said, you're going to leave? Yeah, I'm going to leave. So he leaves. But that's not the end of it for a narcissist. They never leave because they need you. They want what they're going to get from you. They want to leave, but they're entitled. They feel entitled to everything you have been providing them for that period of time. So the discard is not really a discard. Next slide. We get into something called the Hoover. And it's just like the vacuum. They suck you in like a Hoover and go right back into love bombing to try and suck you back in. At 19 years in, I hit a limit. And I said, no. And I didn't know what was up. I knew he left. I was crushed. I was literally on the floor, didn't know what to do with myself, and couldn't pick myself up. My 17-year-old was helping me walk because my MS was acting up. And you get to a point where you just feel like it's over and you can't function. And we got to a place where I ended up not knowing what to do, and I felt horrible. So I went to the ER, and I said, something's wrong with me. I can't put my finger on it, but something's wrong with me. And they said, you get on that bed right now. Because when a woman your age comes in the ER saying stuff like that, you might be having a heart attack. So I jump in the bed. I mean, I was walking like this. I felt not like I was having a heart attack. And so I said, okay. She took my blood pressure. It was like 160 something over whatever, high. And so they're like, okay, we got to treat you. I text him, you need to come here. He wasn't there. I knew where he was because by this point, the smart girl had a GPS tracker out and was watching on my phone, and he was somewhere up on his way to Tennessee. And I went, you need to come. I'm in the ER. Do you want me to come there? Yes, that might be a good idea. They've got me on a heart monitor. And so, segue to the nurse finally sees him coming in the room. He comes in the door, he sits down, and he mansplains. Just spreads himself out, arms folded, glaring at me. No handshake, no kiss, nothing. The minute he says, I have to go to the bathroom, the nurse sends him down the hallway, way down the hallway. And I immediately peeked in on that and thought, So the minute he leaves, she comes and gets in my face. Is he abusing you? Because your blood pressure, the second he came in the door, went from 160 to 184 over 113. The second he walked in the door. And I burst into tears, and I said, he doesn't hit me. That was my answer. He doesn't hit me. Is he abusing you? Well, does he treat me like crap pretty much every day? Yeah, but he doesn't hit me. That makes it okay? Not really. And I just had a wake-up moment where I realized, okay, I'm done. This is it. He's going to kill me if I don't get out of this. So we left. He dropped me off at our house, and he left. I don't know where he went. Don't really care. So we ended up in a situation where I was left literally on the floor looking at my situation and said, I'm done. Decision made. I can't do anything else with this. And I literally hit the floor, supine, and I had a screaming prayer to God. I won't get into the details of it because it would include F-bombs, and we're in a place of worship. But it was not it was a guttural prayer, if you catch my drift. Basically, you need to pick up the slack because I'm done. And so then I took half an Ambien and I went to sleep because I forced myself to go to bed. And then half hour in, I get a text from a woman. And she says, please say that this man is not your husband because he's the man I was going to have children with, you get married to. I immediately pick up the phone. The first thing I said to her was, you need to know that I forgive you before we have any conversation because I know he's lied to you just like he lies to me. I don't know why I said that. That's divine intervention because I probably had a few other things I would have said to her if I'd really been left to my own devices. But in the end, she ended up my friend and my witness in court. That didn't matter because I was married to a narcissist. In the end, I had to, I have this picture of a phoenix up there. I had to take massive action. I had to make a decision, and I had to take action because no decision is good unless you take actions against it. You can say what you want to say, and you can say, I'm going to do something, but if you don't do something and take literal action, the second you make the decision, even if it's the slightest action, it's not going to mean anything. So we went through court. $105,000 later, I'm not married to him anymore. That's right. I was the breadwinner. So in North Carolina, you can be married to Ted Bundy, and it's not going to matter. You're still going to pay them some money. It was just a matter of, am I going to pay him $500,000, which is what he asked for, or am I going to pay him less? And I went into my banker mode. I've been through enough mergers. I can sit with you all day and tire you out. And I ended up paying him $105,000, and I said, I don't have that cash. It's going to be an IRA payment. IRA to IRA. Well, I need cash. I need to solve world peace and save the whales too, but that's not going to happen. So he gets 105, but he can't take it till he's 67, and if he does, he's going to lose half. Merry Christmas. So this is what happens when a narcissist marries a banker. So, next slide. You need to be aware of the methods that they use. They have these flying monkeys. And that's a term actually used by the psychiatric community. They have people in their life that are their friends, that are people that believe them, and everything they say, the second they say it with no verification whatsoever. They're going to tell people that you're horrible. They're going to character shame you. They're going to tell them you're horrible. They're going to tell them you're the one that was unfaithful. They're going to tell them that you are abusive. You name it, it's been said about me. You have to know that they're there. You have to know not to trust them. You have to know not to put any faith in them. And the problem with a narcissist is they segment you out and cut you off from your friends and your family. So you're left in this silo with only those flying monkeys as your friends. So you have to make sure that you keep yourself tied into your network, tied into your tribe. Don't let somebody pull you away. Because if you do, this is what happens. So, next slide. We end up in a situation where all of this, just to get into, I know we've talked about cold therapy and the brain and everything that goes on. The reality is you have this thing called the stress cocktail, and it's something that your brain does to protect you. As a 20-year MS patient, I'm well-versed in the brain because my neurologist has been drilling all this stuff into my brain over time. You've got epinephrine, you've got adrenaline, you have cortisol, and the three of those are a Molotov cocktail for your brain. On top of that, when you throw in the love bombing that they do, that throws in dopamine. And when you combine that with the stress cocktail, you end up literally with the same thing that kidnap victims have, Stockholm Syndrome, where you're tied, you are melded to that person. No matter how abusive they are, you chemically are tied to them. So it becomes something that you can't deal with. And you have all of these problems, cognitive dissonance, making excuses for their behavior. People will talk to you and you'll say, oh, well, I did this. I provoked him with this. I did that. No, you have chemicals in your brain. It literally changes your frontal lobe of your brain, which is responsible for decision-making and reasoning. And you chemically are literally not right in the head. So it's not something, it's something abuse victims share with addiction victims, kidnap victims. They all follow the same process in the brain. You need to really work on that. And so, next slide. There are a few things that you can do Cold therapy is number one on that list. I take a cold shower every day. Why did I start doing this? Yes, it happened to be because of Tom Bilyeu and him talking about it on Instagram. And I said, what is this? And went and asked my neurologist about it. And he said, no, that makes sense, actually, because you've got a vagus nerve here at the back of your brain. And the reality is, all of these things, all of these, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but probiotics, cold therapy, singing, chanting, if you're just going to sit there and meditate, all of that affects your vagus nerve, which is responsible for your limbic system. And all of that is going to help you if you are in that situation where you're totally stressed out. These are things you can do to really help yourself. If you happen to have a narcissist in your life, you need a little more than this, but this is just the 911 section. So these are things you need to try. Sleeping on your right side. I would have thought you're crazy, but that is actually something good for you to try. So all of these things on this list, just take note of them. There's stuff you can do. Next slide. So really, when this comes down to it, it's why did I go down this path? I jumped off the corporate cliff last year. I said, I'm not going to be in banking anymore. I have to help people. I don't want to be a banker anymore. I want to help people, and this is what I want to help them with. So I help those that are dealing with narcissistic and toxic relationships to rediscover their own value, to craft their own future. Back to what Tom was saying about skills, you don't have to do what you're doing right now. If you want to do something else, figure out what those skills are and do it. You can craft your future. It can be whatever you want it to be. And I want to help people do that. So this is really where I'm at. If you don't have a coach and you are in that mode where you want to go somewhere, whether you have a narcissist in your life or not, get a coach. Good coaches have good coaches. I've got several coaches. Everybody here has a coach. So really, this is what you need. You need to get a coach. You need to think for what you want to do, and you need to move forward. And it just needs to make a decision, and you need to take action. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.